Good morning, students. So today we are going to start our next topic in chapter organisms and population, and that is responses of organisms to abiotic factors. In my previous lecture, I have taught you about the various types of abiotic factors that play a significant role in the habitat of an organism. As you know, students, there are two components of an ecosystem. One is the biotic component, which are generally the living organisms, and other is the abiotic components. These abiotic components are the physical factors such as temperature, sunlight, water, and soil, and many more. So here I am going to tell you in this lecture that how the living organism, which is living in a particular habitat from several years, it show variety of responses towards the abiotic factor that are generally playing an important role in the maintenance of that habit. As I have already discussed, that the conditions that are present in a habitat, they cannot be constant, they cannot be static. There is a rapid change in these environmental conditions that are generally present in the habitat of an organism. Student, what the different living organisms do as they are living in this habitat from several years. So these living organisms, they finally get an ability to regulate their body temperature or their homeostasis according to the conditions that are prevailing in their habitat. As I have given you the example of humans earlier, that the constant body temperature or the internal temperature in the body of the living organism, it is 37 degree Celsius. So how the human beings, they are able to maintain their constant body temperature that is equivalent to 37 degrees Celsius. So what they do in the summer season? So generally what happen in the summer season, the outside temperature, it is very high. So in order to cooperate with these conditions, what the human beings do, as they are the example of mammals, they do excessive perspiration. That means they sweat a lot. And because of this excessive sweating, they feel a cooling effect. So this is a kind of a criteria they adopted to maintain their constant internal temperature or homeostasis, that is equivalent to 37 degrees Celsius, because this is the temperature in which all the metabolic reactions, they can successfully happen in the body of a living being. And what they do in the winter season, so generally in the winter season, as the temperature, outside temperature is very low, and the temperature that is present inside the body should be 37 degrees Celsius. So here they are doing a kind of a physical exercise known as a shivering. So this shivering, it produces heat and it raises the body temperature. But one thing I want to tell you here, that plants and some other animals, they do not have such a type of mechanisms to maintain their internal temperature. So these organisms, which are adapted to a narrow range of temperature, and they cannot survive if the temperature either exceeds from this range or it later below from that optimum range. Such type of organisms, they are known as conformers. So in the next slide, I am going to tell you first about the conformers and the regulators. Okay, students. So here, first of all, we will study about the regulators that I have already give you the example of regulators, that birds and mammals, as they are enjoying variety of habitats. You can easily find the birds and mammals even in the Sahara Desert and in the Antarctica too, because they have the ability to maintain their body temperature as well as the concentration of the ions that are present in their body. That means they can easily control the activities like thermoregulation and osmoregulation. So they can enjoy any kind of habitat. So we can easily find the birds even in the Antarctica as well as in the Sahara Desert, where both of them have harsh conditions. Not easy for the animals to survive in this condition, but these birds and mammals, they can easily survive. Okay, student, all the example I have explained that during the summer season they do excessive perspiration, and during the winter season they generally do an exercise that is known as shivering in order to raise their body. Yes, I have told you there are certain animals and nearly all the plants which cannot maintain a constant internal temperature, or you can say homeostasis or environment. Their body changes happens with the ambient temperature. As you know, in aquatic animals, the osmotic concentration of the body fluids, it changes with that of the ambient water or osmotic concentration. So these plants and animals, they are known as the conformers. So thermoregulation, it is meant to be an energetic mechanism for them. And this is very much true in case of small animals such as shrews and hummingbirds. What is the special thing about these shrews and hummingbirds that they cannot easily find in the habitats where cold conditions are present? Because you know that heat loss and heat gain, it is actually a function that is related with surface area. As these animals are very small, so their body volume is very small as compared to their surface area, large surface area. So as a result, what happens? More and more heat that can easily lost from their body when the outside temperature is very cool. So they have to expend much energy to generate body heat through metabolism, and that is not possible for these animals. So that's why the small size animals such as shrews and hummingbirds, we cannot easily find in polar regions. Yes, student, I have written everything regarding this. And one thing I want to discuss with you that if stressful external conditions, they are localized or they remain only for a short period of time or a short duration, then the organism has two alternatives for their survival. Either the organism migrate or it suspend their activity. So first of all, I want to tell you about migrate. The animals can move away temporarily from the stressful conditions that are present in their habitat to a more hospitable area, and they return when the stressful period is over, or you can say when favorable condition, they return in their habitat. So there are so many birds such as Siberian cranes during the winter season when there is heavy snowfall in Siberia. These cranes, they enters in the famous Keolada National Park, Bharatpur Wildlife Sanctuary in Rajasthan. And this place hosts thousands of migratory birds that come from Siberia and other extremely cold northern regions. These birds, they easily stay here as they are the warm-blooded animals. They lay their eggs, they nourish their baby birds, give birth to their baby birds. And when the favorable conditions they later arise, they later return to their habitats. And here they stay for some time. This kind of migration is known as a temporary migration. Okay, student, the next option that the animals can easily adopt to cope with the stressful conditions, that is suspend. So this process is very much visible in case of certain bacteria, fungi, and some lower plants. That during the stressful conditions, all of these bacteria, fungi, and plants, they have a thick wall that surrounds their spores. And why this thick wall, it surrounds the spores or it covers the spores? Because it helps them to survive in unfavorable conditions. So these germinate when the favorable conditions arise. So this period is known as their perennation period. And similarly, in case of higher plants, what we see, the seeds and other vegetative reproductive structures, they are also going into a period of rest during the stressful conditions. And they are not dispersed during these conditions because as the favorable conditions are absent, enough amount of oxygen is not available to them, water, moisture conditions are not there, so the seed can easily die. So in unfavorable conditions, they enters into a period of rest, and that is known as a seed dormancy. So during this period, they reduce their metabolic activities and they are not showing any kind of germination or dispersion. So when the favorable condition they later returns, then they get enough amount of oxygen as well as water, and they can easily germinate and produce new plants. Yes, student, the thing is also related with animals too. In animals, the organism, if unable to migrate, might avoid the stress by escaping in time. Here I want to give you the example of polar bears. These polar bears, they enter into a long sleep during the winter season, and that is known as their hibernation period. So here what the polar bear do, it slept for a long time, not doing any kind of metabolic activities, not eat anything, or even not produce any kind of excretory products or urinate. So this is only to cope with these stressful conditions that are present in their habitat. Similarly, some snails and fishes, during the summer season, they enter into summer sleep, which is known as estivation. So that they do to cope with the problems that are related with heat and desiccation, etc. And in case of zooplankton species, that are the small worm-like structures present in the ponds, under unfavorable conditions, these zooplanktons, which are present in the lakes and ponds, they enter into a stage of suspended development, and that is known as a diapause. So during this process, they are not showing any kind of metabolic activities, but when the favorable conditions return, then they are very much active at their place. Yes, student, I am going to tell you about a new topic, and that is adaptations. As you know that the conditions that are present in the habitat of an organism cannot be same all the time. So every organism must have to face stressful conditions in their habitat, as the organism is living in that habitat from so many years. So in order to cope with these stressful conditions, many adaptive features develop in these organisms during this course of evolution. So this is actually the adaptation. So these adaptive features, they are not developed all of a sudden, but they are the result of a long process. You can say a long course of evolution or development. So if you want to define adaptation, then what is adaptation? It is an attribute of the organism, maybe morphological, physiological, or behavioral, and that enables the organism to easily survive and reproduce in its habitat. So these adaptations, they are the result of a long evolutionary time. And all of these adaptations, they are genetically fixed in an organism, that is, they are controlled by some special type of genes that get expressed during these stressful conditions. Yes, student, here I am going to discuss with you the various type of adaptations found in different animals. So first of all, I am going to give you the example of kangaroo rat. So in the absence of the external source of water, the kangaroo rat, which is generally the inhabitant of the North American deserts, is capable of meeting all its water requirement through its internal fat oxidation. And what is the special thing about this fat oxidation? That here in this reaction, water is produced as a byproduct. And in this way, the animal is able to cope with the external conditions that are present in the habitat. It also has the ability to concentrate its urine so that the minimum volume of the water is used to remove through the excretory products. So in this way, the animal can easily survive in such harsh conditions. And second, I want to tell you about the adaptations that are found in case of desert plants. So the desert plants, they have a thick cuticle, which is the waxy layer that is present over the epidermis in the leaf surfaces. And their stomatas, they are also present in deep pits. That means second type of stomatas are present in order to minimize water loss through transpiration. And in these animals, a special type of photosynthetic pathway, it generally operates, which is known as CAM pathway. So it enables the stomata to remain closed during the day. Another very important thing about the desert plants, that is desert plants such as acacia, they do not have leaves. Instead of these leaves, Here the stem, which is a green flattened stem, they are doing the process of photosynthesis. So here the leaves, they are either absent or they are reduced to spine in order to prevent the loss of water through a process which is known as a transpiration. Yes, students, one very important rule I am going to discuss with you, and that is known as Allen's rule. So mammals who are actually the inhabitants of a colder climates or some hill stations, they generally have shorter ears and limbs. You know that forelimbs and hindlimbs are present in humans. So why they have shorter ears and limbs? To minimize the heat loss. And this is known as Allen's rule. In the polar seas, aquatic mammals such as seals, they have a thick layer of fat which is known as blubber, and that blubber layer is present below their skin. And this layer, it acts as an insulator and reduces the loss of the body heat. Student, after these desert adaptations, I will discuss with you the physiological adaptations. So some organisms, they also possess adaptations that are physiological and that allow them to quickly respond to a stressful condition. You know that at any high altitude, for example, there is a place known as Rohtang Pass near Manali, and its height is greater than 3,500 meters. Or you can say some place in Leh. Generally, when the people they visit that place, they are experiences the phenomenon which is known as altitude sickness. They are experiencing so many symptoms such as nausea, fatigue, and heart palpitation. Why this happen? This is because in the low atmospheric pressure of the high altitudes, the body does not get enough oxygen. But gradually we get acclimatized and stop experiences this altitude sickness. How this happen? The body compensates low oxygen that is available in that place by increasing red blood cell production and decreasing the binding affinity of the hemoglobin, and by decreasing the breathing rate too. So in most animals, the metabolic reactions and hence all the physiological functions, they are generally occurring at a narrow range. For example, in human, this narrow range of temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, but there are certain microbes such as archaebacteria. They can easily flourish in hot springs or deep sea hydrothermal vents where the temperature far exceeds 200 degrees Celsius. So these particular microbes, they have special type of enzymes whose denaturation cannot take place even at very high temperature. Similarly, in case of biochemical adaptations, there are certain fishes that can easily thrive in Antarctic water, where the temperature is always almost present below zero. And large variety of marine animals, marine invertebrates and fishes, they can easily live at a great depth in the oceans, where the pressure of the water currents could be greater than 100 times than the normal atmospheric pressure that we experience. So how these animals, they can easily swim in such high conditions of pressure. So organisms living in such extreme environment, they are showing a fascinating array of biochemical adaptations. Besides these animals, sometimes they are also showing behavioral adaptations. Some organisms show behavioral responses to cope with the variations that are present in their environment. So desert lizards, they lack the physiological ability that mammals have to deal with the high temperature present in their habitat. So how these animals manage to keep their body temperature constant by behavioral means? What the lizard do, they bask in the sun and absorb heat when their body temperature drops below the comfort zone, but move to the shade when the ambient temperature it starts increasing. So some species, they are capable of burrowing into the soil to hide and escape from the above ground heat. So in this way, by behavioral means, the lizard is able to maintain their body temperature. Okay, student, after adaptations, we are going to study about population. So whenever we are using the word population, then That means in a particular area, when so many members, they are belonging to different species, they live together, not only living together, but also they interact with each other. So such a group of different species who are living and interacting in a particular habitat, that is known as population. As you know very well, there is no individual who is ready to live alone. An individual do not like to live in isolation. So many individuals, they live in the form of groups. So individuals of any species live in groups in well-defined geographical areas, share and compete for similar type of resources that are present in the habitat, potentially interbreed among themselves and constitute a population. So in order to define a population, we are using here certain characters, and these are known as the population attributes. So as an individual is described by certain features, a population can also be described by certain attributes. So as if you want to describe an individual, you generally use the term birth and death. Similarly, in order to describe a population, instead of birth and death, we here use the terms birth rate and death rate. For example, if in a pond there are 20 lotus plants that are generally growing in that pond, so after a time 8 more lotus plants they bloom, then we have to find out the birth rate, then we divide this 8 by 20 and get some value, and that is actually the birth. For example, if we are doing a culture of 10 Drosophila in the laboratory, and out of these 10 Drosophila 4 dies, and we are here have to calculate the death rate, then the death rate is 4 divided by 10, and this gives us the value of death rate. So beside death rate and birth rate, as this death and birth rate, they are generally telling us the increase and decrease with respect to the members of the population. There is one another important attribute, and that is the sex ratio. So this sex ratio, in case of individual, it tells us whether the individual is a male or a female. But in case of a population, it tells us that how many members in that population are actually the females, what is their number, and how many members they are males. For example, in a particular area, if 100 members are there in the population, and out of these 60 they are the males, and these means the rest 40 they are the females. So this is the sex ratio. The third very important thing is that all the members that constitute a population cannot be of the same age. There are different age group members are present in a population. So if we draw the number of members in the form of a pyramid, that how many members they are belonging to different age groups, then we get the age pyramids. So this age pyramids, it actually tells us the ages of different individuals that are present in a population. So they, according to their shape, they can be of 3 types: expanding type of age pyramids, then a stable type of age pyramids, and declining type of age pyramids. The student, in expanding type of age pyramids, the bottom is broad and the apex is narrow. Why? Because the pre-reproductive members here are more in number as compared to the post-reproductive members. So we have 3 kind of individuals according to age: pre-reproductive members, then reproductive members, and then post-reproductive members. So in case of expanding, we have pre-reproductive members more in number as compared to the post-reproductive members. But in case of stable type of age pyramid, all the 3 types of members, it may be pre-reproductive, it may be reproductive, or it may be post-reproductive, their number is almost same to each other. And in case of declining type of age pyramids, here what is the main thing? The number of the reproductive members, it is almost equivalent to the number of the post-reproductive members. So there is no growth seen in case of the declining type of age pyramids. The next thing where I have going to explain you is regarding the population size. What is the size of the population? Whether the population is growing or declining. Sometimes we are using the word population density designated by the capital letter N. So this population size or population density can be measured in different ways. Sometimes we calculate the population density or population size of an area in the form of numbers. Suppose I am saying that I have a field of sugarcane and 100 sugarcane plants are growing in that field. This means I am able to count each and every plant that is present in my field. So here I am expressing the population size in the form of number. But sometimes the expression of the population size in the form of number is not very much relevant, as the contribution of certain species in case of biomass or productivity is more than some other species as the number is less. So for example, if in my field one huge banyan tree is growing and there are 200 plants of Parthenium indicum, these are the wild grasses. So you know that these Parthenium indicums, they are generally the herbs, and the banyan tree, it is a big tree and it has a huge crown. It has a huge crown. This means their contribution in biomass production or in the process of photosynthesis, it is quite more as compared to these 200 plants of Parthenium indicum. So here it is more valid to express the size of population in terms of biomass production, not in terms of number. In certain cases, we cannot give the absolute population density. In that case, we give the relative population density as compared to the absolute population density. Instead of expressing the population size in terms of absolute population density, we here use the relative population density. For example, if one morning I visit a pond, I want to catch some fishes over there, and I have one fish net with me. I put that fish net into the water, and I found some fishes, few fishes in that fish net. Then I was asked, but how many fishes are present in this pond? Then obviously I reply that there are few fishes present in the ponds because I catch only 2 to 3 fishes. So here I am not going to tell the people about the absolute population density. Instead of that, I am just making an observation on the base of certain assumptions in my mind. And this is not the absolute population density. Instead of this, it is a relative population density. In my second example, for example, I have a culture some bacteria in a petri plate in laboratory, and thousands or millions of bacteria, they are generally growing over the plate, and I was asked that how many bacteria are there in the plate. I'm not able to give the answer because there is a huge population of bacteria over the plate. So in case of this, I cannot express the population size in terms of this absolute density. Instead of that, sometimes we are expressing the population size in case of in the form of, you can say, relative densities. And the fourth thing is, suppose we have to count some wild animals that are furious ones, and we have to make the population census for these animals. For example, in a forest, how many tigers are there or how many lions are there? So it is not an easy task for us to count each and every tiger, because that animal can make a harm to us because it is a wild animal. In case of this, in order to find out the population size, we generally count the pug marks and the fecal pellets of these animals. So we here give an indirect kind of observation. So that is also the relative population density, not the absolute. So in this way, we generally calculate the population size that are present in an area, which gives us an idea about the growth or the declining nature of the population. Yes, student, after population size, I am going to explain you about population growth. So all of you know very well, the size of the population cannot be static. The size of the population is always a dynamic entity. It keeps changing with time, depending upon how much food is available in that habitat, what is the predation pressure, that means how many predators are there, And what are the weather conditions that are present in the habitat? It may be favorable or it may be unfavorable. So all of these factors, they generally decide the growth of that particular population. So here I am broadly discussing about 4 factors that have a major influence over the population growth, and that is first one is natality. Natality is the number of birth during a given period in the population. Second one is mortality. Mortality is the number of death during a given period in a population. And third one is immigration. Immigration means individuals of the same species that have come into the habitat from some other habitat. And emigration means individual of the population that have left the habitat and joined some other habitat and increased its number. Okay, student, there is one equation that is related with the growth of a population. So if capital N is the population density at a time t, then its density at time t plus 1. It can be easily written as Nt plus 1 is equal to Nt b plus I minus d plus E. So what this equation means that population density will increase if the number of birth plus the number of immigrants is more than the number of death plus the number of immigrants, otherwise it will decrease. Yes, student, in order to explain the population growth in an area, here we are going to study about 2 types of growth models. The first type of growth model, that is known as the exponential growth model. I am going to explain. Before this, I want to tell you that always remember the growth of a population cannot be a static. It is always a dynamic entity, and the growth of a population takes place according to the food available in the habitat, what kind of conditions are there in the habitat, and it is also affected by the presence of other biotic and abiotic factors. So here I am going to explain you the first type of the growth model, that is known as exponential growth model. So this model is based on certain adaptive assumptions, students. So what this model said, that the growth that is occurring in an area, if the food and the other resources that are present in that area is always in plenty, then this growth is always an exponential growth, and it takes place in a geometric fashion. So it is based on the assumption that when the resources in the habitat they are unlimited, then this means each species has the ability to realize fully its innate potential to grow in numbers, as there are no checks. Plenty of resources are there, so there is no struggle between the species, and each species can easily get whatever that species want. So here in case of exponential growth, if in a population of size capital N, the birth rates they are expressed as small b and death rate as small d, then increase and decrease in capital N. Unit period of time, that is small t, will be given by this differential equation, that dn divided by dt is equal to b minus d into n. So here b minus d, it can be equal to small r. So you can write dn by dt is equal to small rn. So small r in this equation is actually the intrinsic rate of the natural increase. It depends upon the conditions that are present in the habitat. So if all the conditions are favorable, then this means the growth of the population, it takes place in an exponential or in a geometric fashion, as no checks are there, abundance of resources are there, but that this kind of growth model cannot exist in realistic conditions. It is just based on assumptions, because it cannot happen that resources they are unlimited. Resources are always limited in nature. So the most valid type of the growth curve, which actually explain the growth of a population in an area, and the valid one is the logistic growth curve. So the logistic growth curve, it tells us that there is always a competition between the members of the population for food, space, shelter, and breeding partners. So as Darwin said, that every species must have to do struggle, must have to face the competition by the other species in order to obtain the resources that are present in the habitat. And during this course of competition, those species who has developed certain adaptive features in them, they adjust themselves according to the natural conditions. They can easily survive and later they reproduce to increase their number. And this is what is called as Darwinian fitness or reproductive fitness. So as a logistic growth curve tells us, resources, they are always limited and species have to fight. They have to do struggle to obtain these resources, whether it may be food, it may be space, it may be breeding partners, or it may be shelter. So this logistic type of growth curve, it is always in the form of a English alphabet, that is S alphabet. It is a sigmoid type of growth curve. And in this type of growth, initially it shows a lag phase, then followed by the phases of acceleration and deceleration. So it is designated by the differential equation dn by dt is equal to small rn k minus n divided by k. So here n is the population density at a time t. Capital R is the intrinsic rate of natural increase. And K here is a special letter which is known as carrying capacity. All of you know very well that every habitat has an ability to hold a particular number of organisms only, according to the resources or conditions that are present in that habitat. There is a limitation for each habitat that how many individuals they can accommodate. Since resources for growth of a population, they are finite and become limiting. So this logistic growth model, it is considered as a realistic. So carrying capacity is the factor that is related with logistic growth curve. It tells us every habitat has accommodate a particular number of individuals, and if the number exceeds that limiting number, then those organisms, extra organisms, they will die in lack of resources because these resources cannot make available to them. Okay, student, the thing is very much true here that resources cannot be limited. So species must have to face a struggle. And those who succeed in the struggle, they survive and show Darwinian fitness. And those who cannot succeed, they will die. So logistic growth curve is a realistic type of growth curve that generally easily find in an area. So it is a valid type of growth. Okay, student, that's all regarding this population growth. So go through all these models and their curves. And later we will study about the different type of population interaction. So that's all in today's lecture, students. Have a nice day.